Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back, you guys, to AG University Podcast. It is I, your host, your lead dancing you and professor at Anna Grace Newell on all major platforms. And today I have a guest that I'm really excited about. This is someone that I found in my journey to learn more about autoimmune responses, or basically any symptom in the body. How about that? If you have any strange symptom, from anxiety to autoimmune to hormone imbalance, this is an amazing listen. And this is a type of information that, as much as I've been in this work of holistic alternative medicine, just like learning anything there is to learn, I'm a very curious cat. I always tell you guys that. I had never ever heard of this type of work. So I'm about to introduce Dr. Melissa Sell. She is of the German New Medicine podcast, and her main focus and area of expertise and spreading information and knowledge it's German New Medicine. That's what she's helping to spread the word on social media. And so when I first saw one of her posts about German New Medicine, I was like, what is this? I've never heard of this. And so obviously she's going to explain it and tell us all about it. But it really is, to me, it makes a lot of sense from a very basic, primal, biological understanding. Like, this information doesn't feel as necessarily quote unquote woo woo as some of the other stuff that I talk about, or spiritual, or, this feels, maybe esoteric is a better word. This feels very rooted in nature. And that really intrigued me. And I also just want to say, I come from a medical family. Like, my sister's a nurse practitioner. My brother-in-law is a doctor. Lots of aunts, uncles, grandparents were doctors. So I am not ever here to say that there is a right way or a wrong way. If you are a nurse or anyone in the medical field, I absolutely commend you and applaud you. It is a tough job. I know this because my sister, she's a nurse practitioner. So I'm not here to shame anybody and say, like, this is what I believe or this is all wrong. But I do think that we have a lot of systems that are out of date. That's how I feel. And I've told my sister this with my recent health journey that I was on. And even she was like, yeah, this is, I don't even know what to think about your whole situation, because it's not anything that I've ever learned about or have been taught. And so I always want to say that there's no right way, there's no wrong way. I just want to use this platform to bring in new perspectives. And this German New Medicine really opened my mind to a whole new land of perspective around healing. So essentially, every symptom that's coming to us, there is a biological response, or there's something that is happening as a result of what they call shocking conflict or event. What I have also noticed sometimes as trauma, but not always trauma. Like, that's a word that I would use on this podcast. Sometimes, we have an illness that comes about as a result of trauma. It's not always that. But it's really getting back into the root of looking at a symptom as a little messenger. And that is how we were designed. God made us via nature to have these really beautiful responses to signal to us some type of information or data, because our bodies are brilliant. Our bodies are super smart. So anyways, I know this is a very long-winded kind of thought process on whenever I bring on medical guests with new perspectives, but I always just want to say, like, Dr. Melissa Sell, I think she is an incredible advocate for just opening up your mind to using your intuition. That's really what she teaches, and that's where she and I are so aligned, is that we really believe that the true path to healing is connecting with the intuition. And maybe we both have different modalities. Mine is the Akashic Records, hers is German New Medicine. But at the root core, we were both saying the same thing, like, listening to your intuitive voice, going within, is the ultimate path to freedom and the ultimate path to healing. And I really believe that. And I have my own story to attest to that as well. So anyways, Dr. Melissa Sell, she's going to take it from here. She's going to explain everything. And I really want to prime you guys to listen. So she's exploring the work of, I'm probably going to mispronounce it, but it's Dr. Ryke Geerd Hamer, who's a German doctor who discovered and developed an entirely new paradigm for understanding health and disease. And like I said, this is a perspective that I'd never ever heard of. So I was like, wow, this is actually really fascinating. And she shares Dr. Hamer's story of how he came about this, and he experienced a loss and then the result of that loss. And she mentions it in the beginning of the episode, but I want to prime you guys to listen to the end. There's like maybe middle of the end where she talks a little bit more specifically about this body part and why that body part was affected. And that really clicked inside my brain. It really was like, oh, wow, we are always trying to, I guess, exist amongst bringing balance into nature. And that really, really struck a chord with me. So I want you guys to, just fine tune your ears to that part. But yeah, she's brilliant. She has a lot of information to share with you guys and makes it really digestible. So I would just like to say thank you, Dr. Melissa, for coming on, and let's learn about German New Medicine. And you guys can catch her on the German New Medicine podcast. All right, without further ado, Dr. Melissa Sell, welcome to the show. Alrighty, guys, welcome back to AG University podcast. Today, I am so excited. We have Dr. Melissa Sell in the house, and she's about to blow all of our minds, myself included. Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. Just to paint the picture, I wanted to read your post. So this is how I found Dr. Melissa, and I wanted to read this post. It's like a little bit, it's not that long. You're like, I know I wrote the post, but I wanted to read it for everyone because everyone's been on this journey with me. We've been in my autoimmune era, which I am so excited because it brought me to you and it brought me a lot of new information. And so I'm going to read this post that Dr. Melissa wrote, and then I kind of want you to just take it away because it really just tees everyone up for exactly who you are and what you do. Alrighty, so this is her post. This is how I found you. It says, it's not the gluten, it's not the cheese, it's not the germ, it's not the sneeze, it's not the chemicals in the Febreze, it's not the grease, it's not the dirt, it's not the detergent on your shirt, it's not the toxins, it's not the mold, it is the conflict in your soul. And I was like, oh, it's the unresolved problem, source of distress. It's the situation that has been disturbing your rest. Your symptom is inviting you to find a solution. It's a call to growth, to personal evolution. It's a time to get quiet, self-reflect, contemplate. Only you know the shift that will release this weight. And I was like, immediate follow. and, then, and then from there, I was hooked. So please tell us all things. I am so new to this. I guess originally I was introduced as German New Medicine, but I know that you also refer to it as German healing knowledge as well.
Yep.
But you take it away. I'm done talking. Tell
Totally.
us
Yes.
everything.
Yes. What a perfect entry point. I mean, yeah. So German New Medicine, or Germanische Heilkunde, the Germanic healing knowledge. Dr. Hamer, shifted the name of what he wanted, to call his work, because it stopped being new, because this has been around for 40 years. He submitted his thesis in 1981. He made these discoveries over 40 years ago. And so, this amazing wisdom of how the body adapts to conflict. And so the conflict in your soul, so the psyche is impacted with a shocking situation, something that catches you off guard, and the tissues of the body are biologically programmed to adapt, to morph, to change themselves depending on the nature of the situation you encountered in specific ways. And so the things that we thought were diseases, sicknesses, breakdowns of the body, something going wrong, Dr. Hamer discovered that they are meaningful biological adaptations to the conflict. And he discovered this because of his personal tragedy. In 1978, his son and his daughter went off on this trip, and his son was sleeping on a boat, and this crazy situation unfolded where the crown prince of Italy got all crazy and got mad and got in a boat and shot off this gun. He didn't shoot him on purpose, but the gun went off. The bullet went through the boat, shot Dr. Hamer's son, Dirk, and he was airlifted to the hospital. They tried to do everything they could to help him survive, but he ended up dying. And so after that, Dr. Hamer developed testicular cancer, and he just absolutely knew there was a connection between the death of his son and his testicular cancer. If you want to know more about that story, there's actually a documentary on Netflix called The King Who Never Was. They don't talk favorably about Dr. Hamer, so it's not about Hamer or his discoveries. It's simply about the prince and the story and the whole thing. And it kind of gives you some depth to, the gravity of this situation. So it's highly publicized. It's the prince. It's this whole big thing. But after that, Dr. Hamer, he was a very bright, very intelligent genius of a doctor who he just knew that there was a connection. And he started working as head of an oncology unit in Bavaria. And so he had the opportunity to test this hypothesis, this idea that there was a shocking trauma that led to the cancer. And so he started talking to the cancer patients. And so every man with testicular cancer, he'd ask, did you have, a loss? Did you lose someone close to you prior to your cancer? And every time it was a yes. And so every woman, though, who had breast cancer, who had a glandular lobular breast cancer, he found that that woman experienced some type of intense worry. And everyone who had lung cancer had a different experience. They had a death fright. They thought they were going to die. Everyone with liver cancer had some type of starvation conflict. And so this pattern started to emerge, and he started to see, the changes in the body, so the cancer that develops, seems to be directly related to the type of experience that the person went through. Whether it was a loss, whether it was a starvation, whether it was a death fright. It's like, okay, so there is something, the biology is changing in response to the specific situation. And then he looked at the brain, because he knew, because something's going on in the psyche, something's going on in the organ, there has to be a connection in the brain computer that controls everything. And so he found on CT brain scan that every time there was a specific type of shock, there would be a circle, like this ring formation in a specific area of the brain, and that always correlated to the specific organ. And then he'd test it again, and he'd see, specific shock, circle in the brain, specific organ adaptation. And so, I mean, as he's discovering this, he is actually having dreams of his son. His son's coming to him in these dreams and saying, "Yes, Geerd, you're on the right path. You're discovering this." And Dr. Hamer, he's, as he's kind of going through these cases and he's making these connections. I mean, I can kind of just see the movie of this, and eventually when the world catches on to this, of like him kind of making this. He said he went weak in the knees. He's like, am I really discovering what I think I'm discovering? And he's getting these confirmation through these dreams of his son saying yes. And so he's like, but there's more to discover. So he goes on to discover 5 biological laws of nature. So how the organism, and the mind body connection, people have known about that for a very long time. The connection between, okay, something happens, or we thought it was stress. But the old model, and this is what I used to teach, this is what I used to believe. I'm a chiropractor, that's my background. I used to do all things holistic lifestyle, clean up your diet, exercise, get rid of the toxins. Like, that was what I thought needed to be done in order to get healthy. So that's like the relevance of that post of like, oh, we've got to, clean up the diet and get rid of the toxic fragrances, and we have to clean up this and clean up that. But the thing is I knew people who cleaned up all the things, who were doing all of the healthy lifestyle things. They were, they were praying, they were meditating, they were positive people. They, were doing all of this healthy lifestyle stuff, but then they'd have like a cancer diagnosis. And that to me just did not add up. It was this huge gap in my, I was teaching people, if you do this, if you clean up your diet and your life and lifestyle in this way, you will not get cancer. And then it would happen, and it didn't make sense to me. But when I learned this map, that it's not about the external physical stuff. Yes, it plays a role. It's not that it doesn't play a role. Do not throw the baby out with the bathwater. It does play a role, and it is important. However, you could have the cleanest diet. You could live in the most pristine environment. But if you have a specific type of biological conflict shock, which has certain criteria, it's not just general stress. So you don't need to, sometimes people will hear this and they'll get worried about being stressed because they're like, oh, stress causes cancer. That's not what this is. It's a specific conflict shock. So it's a moment in time where you were caught off guard, like an unexpected thing happened. You get a call. You were not expecting this. That you couldn't prepare yourself for this. You get some information. Something shocking happens, and it's highly acute. It's dramatic. It's isolating in that moment. You feel all alone. And so your biology, when something exceeds our threshold for what we can handle, the biology has pre-programmed, and these are ancient, deeply intelligent adaptation programs that are meaningful. The 5th biological law is that there is no evil in nature. The body doesn't do anything evil. It doesn't do anything malignant, malicious. It never attacks itself. So the whole idea of autoimmune, my body's attacking itself, the body does not attack itself. It only does what is purposeful and what makes sense. And so, in Dr. Hamer's situation, if an organism in nature loses its offspring, oh no, my offspring is dead. What can the body do? How can the body enhance itself in order to help fix this situation? Doesn't it make sense that it would enhance the testicle? So the thing that produces new life would get enhanced if there was a loss. And it's like that is profoundly logical. It is biological. It makes biological sense that if the body has the capacity to grow extra tissue in the ovary, in the testicles, in the breast gland, what does the breast gland do? The breast gland produces breast milk. And so we have to think in the ancient context. If your child was just, mauled by a wild animal and is bleeding out on the plain, and you've got, you don't have running water, this is ancient programming. We're thinking about, oh my goodness, my child might bleed out, needs nourishment. My biology says I can produce more breast glands so you can produce nourishment for this injured child. So we have to think about all of these biological programs in the ancient context. Why would the body do this? Well, at some point in our history of development, it served a survival advantage. And so every symptom, and he thought at first, because it was cancer for him and he was studying cancer, he thought that this only was, he was finding out what caused cancer, but he found these biological programs, and this map applies to a pimple, a hemorrhoid, a cold sore, an earache, a sty in your eye. Every symptom in the body, that isn't due to an overt poisoning or a deficiency or an injury. So all other symptoms we have to look at what conflicting event initiated an adaptation process in the body that led to the symptom. So eczema, eczema is a separation conflict. It has to do with the outer skin. Acne, it's a feeling attacked or feeling soiled conflict. Chronic gut issues is an indigestible morsel, something you can't process, something you can't digest. And so every organ has a biological purpose. And when we can trace back, the symptom reveals the story of what happened. And so when a person comes with a list of symptoms, I know the experiences that happened in their life that led to those symptoms. And if we can talk about it and find a solution, because every biological conflict needs a biological solution, so we have to figure out, what do you need in order to resolve this? What's it going to take for you to breathe a sigh of relief, for the stone to drop from your soul so that you see, this is complete. And once it's complete, the biological program can complete, and the adaptation, it has to no longer be necessary. But if you have a chronic symptom that's still going on that you haven't gotten rid of, it's because there is an unresolved conflict. And once we identify the conflict and find a resolution, your program will complete and the body can go back to its normal homeostasis and get out of this adaptation cycle.
Wow. You were blowing my mind. I want you to talk this whole entire podcast. I really don't even want to talk, but I have questions, so many questions. So what is your route for providing a solution? Are we talking hypnotherapy? Are we talking, what are we doing? Once we
Well,
figure out the symptom, the story, where do we go from there?
yeah, biggest thing is we have to learn to think biologically. So this
Okay.
map, again, we psychologize, we kind of, we do all sorts of things that are very much mind based, but we have to think more about, what does the biology need? What's the
Okay.
biological solution? So we have to, like a child, for example, a child who's dealing with a chronic skin issue, we can't say, well, just think differently about it, darling. It's like the child needs a biological solution, if,
Right.
and what's, the biology of a child is meant to be with its mother, like, and so if a 9-month-old is being sent to daycare and away from its mother and is having this chronic skin issue, that child wants mommy. And there is no substitute for having the mother with you. And so really, and this is where the implications of this map, it's so revolutionary. It would change everything about how we operate life, how we operate society, how we look at the mother child dynamic, how we look at family, because we have forgotten our ancient biological roots, and we have done all sorts of things, from the women's liberation. Oh, we're liberated. Now we have to drop our children off at daycare and go to work and separate the family. And it's like, that is not biological. It's not biological to separate a mother from a child, before the child understands what's happening and before it makes sense, from just a developmental perspective. And so we have to return to biology. We have to look at, so
Mm.
like for a woman who is dealing with some type of chronic issue, like the biology of the woman is built around, her sexuality, which is to bring babies into the world. The man, his world is built around territory. The man needs a territory so that he can provide and protect for the woman. I mean, this is all about the game of life. And that's the fifth biological law. And which is, again, there's nothing meaningless in nature. All of these biological programs, everything that the body does is about survival and procreation, survival of the organism and enhancing the ability of the organism to reproduce, because without this, the game can't keep going. And so
Right.
that's why really when we're looking at, female issues, feminine health issues, we have to look at procreation. We have to look at how are we stopping procreation, halting procreation, taking birth control, what's going on in our relationships, what kind of men are we attracting? It's like, ultimately the woman needs the best provider and protector so she can continue the species. I mean, that is everyone's biological programming. And when we live outside of that programming because of modern society, when we change our hormones, when we do all of this stuff to the body, it changes, the our thoughts about what is necessary. And so we get into our heads about it, but we need to get back into our bodies. We need to look back at what is my biology saying that I need, and how can I work within that. So, as far as tools, people can use all sorts of different tools that resonate with you to like find the resolution. I believe that there's many, many, many paths to resolution. And most of the time, you're resolving conflicts all the time. Just be aware of that. All the time, little conflicting things are happening. You're resolving. You do it intuitively and instinctively. But if you're caught in a chronic loop, so if you're having a chronic symptom again and again and again, that means that you are disconnected from your instincts and your intuition on that topic. Something has gotten, you've gotten distracted from what is necessary in order for you to evolve past something. Because that's it. Every conflict is an invitation to evolution, to growth, to, okay, once I adapt, once I figure that out, I kind of up level and I see the world differently and I experience the world differently and I don't have to go through that thing again. But if you're in a cycle and you keep having the same type of problem, it means we haven't evolved past whatever that thing is. And so that's how, again, people are doing you've resolved thousands of conflicts in your life. You've had things and resolved it and gotten through it. But it's the chronic ones where we really have to look at how have you built your identity around this problem? How have you, how is your whole way that you see the world shaped by this particular experience? And what can we do to, bring some, my whole avenue and channel for helping people is awareness. You have to see what's going on in there. Do you even know? Have you even reflected on the thoughts because when you have compulsive thinking, that compulsive thinking is an indication of an active conflict. It's not that the thought causes the problem. The thought is an indication that there is something unresolved in your life. And so if you can become aware of your compulsive thoughts of, my mind keeps going back to this. I keep going back to this problem. I keep comparing myself to other people. I keep doing this. It's a self-devaluation conflict. I'm devaluing myself. Something traumatic happened. Something caught me off guard. And I felt I'm not good enough, smart enough, pretty enough, wealthy enough. I'm not enough of something. And so I keep going back to that same wound, and I haven't found a way to shift the way I feel about myself. I haven't found a new source of self-value. So you have to look, where are you getting your self-value from? What, we take apart the conflict. We have to look at, what does this mean for you? What does your sexuality mean to you? What does your, your financial status mean to you? Because we can have conflicts about finances, conflicts about relationships, conflicts about touch, conflicts about, you name it, there's a conflict about it. And so we have to figure out all of the what it means to you and how you can kind of find a practical biological solution. And that's the first step. And then if a practical biological solution, might not be available, that's when we look at shifting, kind of a transcendent solution. How do we just like look at this in a completely different way so that this is no longer such a conflicting topic for us?
Mm-hmm. So also, I know you've referenced laws 1 and 5. Is it too lengthy for you to share the other ones just so everyone gets a nice little
I'll try to go
snippet?
through them fast, but yes,
Oh,
we can do it.
okay. I was gonna say if it's too lengthy, but I'm so fascinated. You could give us like a brief summary. That would
Yeah.
be awesome.
Yeah, so the second law is the law of two phases, and this is super cool. So before Hamer's discovery, conventional medicine looked at like, there's like, 500 hot diseases, 500 cold diseases. And what Hamer found was they are two phase of the same process. It's the same biological program, but there's a cold phase and then there's a warm phase. So when you have a conflict, the body shifts into a sympathetic state, so fight or flight, so heightened fight or flight. And this is when you're compulsively thinking, your hands are cold, you're not eating, you're waking up in the night, and your mind just keeps going back to, what's the problem? What's the problem? How do I resolve this? And so when you're in the active conflict, there is tissue adaptation. So depending on what happened, that's going to determine what happens during the conflict active phase. Are we growing extra cells? Are we eroding cells? And that actually is what the third biological law is which cell does what types of tissues, how do they respond when a conflict has occurred. The older brain tissues, so if you look at the GNM map, there is the yellow and the orange group. The yellow and the old orange group, they grow. The tissue gets bigger during the conflict. So an example of that would be the tonsils. The tonsils grow when you're in a conflict of a morsel conflict. So a morsel is, I want to eat this, I want to spit this out. So like classic example, a little child who wants the cookie, doesn't want the broccoli, and they're conflicted about it, and they were shocked, and they're like, I got the cookie yesterday, and I didn't have to eat the broccoli today, and so they're conflicted, they're mad about it, they're throwing a huge tantrum. If it was if they were caught off guard by it, they could have a conflict causing the tonsils to grow. So what is that? It's going to produce more salivary juices so I can better spit out the thing I don't want and better swallow down the thing I do want. Again, there's a biological reason that the tonsils would get bigger. And so that is what's happening during a conflict shock of a morsel conflict. The tonsils are growing. Then when you are, you resolve the conflict, you get the cookie, you don't have to eat the broccoli. Oh, what a relief. I'm so happy now. And so the body, it built up the extra tissue during the conflict. And then now that the conflict is over, we've resolved it. Now the body has programmed within it little microsurgeons to decompose and break down the extra tonsil tissue. And that's when a person has, quote, tonsillitis or an infection of the tonsils. It's not that some nasty bacteria got back on your tonsils and it's causing a problem. What that means is you resolve the morsel conflict, and the white patches, the smelly breath, and just the swelling, because that's the healing phase. So we were in the cold phase, remember, fight or flight, sympathetic active. We resolve the conflict, you move into the warm phase. And so the healing phase, the warm phase, the repair reconstruction phase, this is when the body reverses whatever happened during the conflict. So if we built up extra tissue, now the body needs to break it down. And so you're feverish and your throat is swollen and you're tired because we're extra active. So sympathetic, fight or flight, that's more activity, that's more energy expenditure. Now we're low energy. Oh, I'm fatigued, I'm so tired. Oh, I feel, quote, sick. But the thing is you're never sick. You're either adapting or repairing. And so when you're fatigued and tired and swollen and achy and if you're coughing, if you have a sore throat, that means your body is in the repair phase. And you need to just start thinking about, because this changes everything about how we think about health. And one of the things you'll think about is there's construction taking place. And so whenever there's achy, swollen, sore, pressure, discharge, odor, that means that the body is doing some construction work after an adaptation process. And so that's what's happening during this healing phase, is the body is now decomposing that extra tissue. This is what's happening with a pimple. With a pimple, it's, I felt soiled, I felt attacked, someone said something nasty to me, talked about me behind my back. We've got some back knee because I felt attacked behind my back, or to my face, or I felt ugly, I didn't feel pretty, I judged myself. And so the body, when it feels attacked or feels dirtied or disfigured in some way, it creates extra tissue in the deep skin at that area. And so there's proliferation of tissue. And then when you're off the track, when you resolve it, when you're, distracted, you're not thinking about it anymore, it's not a big deal to you, the body breaks it down. And oh, what's there? A white pussy pimple. That means, oh, there's construction happening right here. There was a conflict, there was an adaptation, and now the body is breaking it down. And so that's an example of the old brain. So that's the tonsils are controlled from the brain stem. That's the endodermal tissue. And then the dermis skin, that's the acne, controlled from the cerebellum. So those are two examples. Now the other things that can happen, again, this is the third biological law, the different categories of our tissues. We have, and this was really relevant to me, the new mesodermal tissue controlled from the cerebral medulla. This is the connective tissue of the body. So this is what gives us our structure, our value. And when you devalue yourself, so when you feel not smart enough, like a bad mother, a bad partner, a bad wife, a bad girlfriend, when you feel not strong enough, when you feel unsupported, when you feel like you're not athletic enough. Oh, you're just, this is one of the most common conflicts, is self-devaluation. I'm down on myself. I'm feeling bad about myself. And when that happens, there is decomposition during the active phase. So the bones, the muscles, the ligaments will decalcify, they will erode, there will be loss of tissue, necrosis of tissue during the conflict. And then once you resolve it, so once you overcome it, once you get your self value back, you're feeling good about yourself, then that tissue goes into repair. And so, you know how they say that after you break a bone, it becomes the strongest bone in your body? That's this program. That is when you're devaluing yourself, we're, renovating the tissue, there's loss of tissue. And then when you resolve the conflict, that tissue becomes stronger than before. And so the bone, and this is where, they'll say, oh, there's a staph infection or in the bone and there's bacteria in the bone. And they say that this is a very bad thing. But actually, it's the healing phase of a self-devaluation conflict, because the bacteria, just like in the old brain, they help to break something down. The bacteria also help to build the bone up. And so these are little microsurgeons. So this is the fourth biological law. It's the law of microbes. And so microbes are not the enemy. There is no contagious diseases. The microbes are helpers. Because the idea that there's pathogens, that there's good bacteria and there's bad bacteria, this is a remnant of religious thinking. This is this idea that there's some type of war and there's good guys and there's bad guys. And if the good guys get weak, so if your immune system, which we look at the immune system completely differently, again, the immune system would never attack you. The immune system isn't, this thing that's fighting. It's a support system. There isn't a battle. There are microbes that operate in the body that have a job to do. So they're like seasonal workers. They turn on when they're needed to help either decompose tissue or to rebuild tissue. It's just amazing. And when you start looking at it through this lens, you see how we have just demonized and made everything that the body is doing something wrong, something scary, something's attacking me, some type of germ. I mean, everyone that, my whole life growing up, oh, if I have some like a sore throat, I think, oh no, the bad strep bacteria are, they're doing something bad to my throat and I need to take the antibiotic to kill the bacteria. That's not what's happening. The bacteria are there helping to repair tissue or break down tissue. They have a job. They don't attack you. They simply help you during the repair and restoration phase. And so then the last germ layer is the ectoderm. This is the outer skin. This is the lining of ducts, the lining of the coronary arteries. And this has to do, all of the things of the red group have to do with connection within the tribe. So separation and hierarchy. So it has to do with our pack hierarchy, territorial conflicts, sexual conflicts, all belong to this red group and the cerebral cortex. And the biological program is loss of tissue during the active conflict. So for example, the skin is about touch. It's about our connection with our mother, our connection with our tribe, feeling a sense of closeness or wanting to push someone away. In this conflict, when it's active, there's loss of tissue during the active conflict, followed by tissue growth and tissue restoration during the healing phase. And so when it comes to microbes don't operate in the red group, but what they call, quote, viruses. So there is no such thing as a virus. The whole idea of a virus is this little, it's not even a living thing. And they say that it can get inside of your body and replicate your RNA and create all of these symptoms. That's not what's happening. The whole virus myth is a deep dive of exploration of looking at the original papers of how they even allegedly isolated a virus. No virus has ever been isolated. HIV has never been isolated. Quote, COVID, they've never isolated these viruses from a sick host and have shown that this virus can be spread from person to person and cause everyone to get sick. You would think that that would just be the basic 101 of how you prove there is a such thing as a contagious virus that makes people sick, but it has never been proven. And there's a lot of resources. That's, like I said, a whole kind of rabbit hole in and of itself. But Dr. Hamer says that it's the ectodermal tissues that when they go through an adaptation process, it's an endogenous thing. So what they're calling a virus, the way that I call it is it's just evidence of adaptation. So if ever you've ever been diagnosed with any kind of virus, All you need to know is that is evidence of tissue adaptation. You had a conflict of the ectodermal tissue. There was loss of tissue and tissue repair, regrowth, and this is basically tissue debris. It's like protein particles that are part of that adaptation. So like HPV, if you've got an issue with your cervix and they say, oh, you've got the quote HPV virus, that doesn't mean that you have some scary virus that could cause a disease in your body. It means you experienced a sexual frustration conflict, which cause adaptation and tissue changes in your cervix. And so that's what it is. It's changes to the tissue of the cervix. They label it something called HPV. All that means to us is you're frustrated in your sexuality. You don't know who your partner is. You're having a breakup, you're having a frustration. Your partner doesn't want to have a child with you. That's a sexual frustration. Again, we have to look at it from the biological perspective. And so that is a summary of the second biological law. So we've got the adaptation phase, the conflict active phase, then we have the healing phase. Halfway through the healing phase, this is really important. There's something called the epicrisis, which is basically a surge of sympathetic activity that pushes the edema. So all healing, so when you're in that swollen, headachy, feverish symptom phase, when you're in the repair phase, you'll get to a point of maximum swelling. And then there's a surge of sympathetic dominance. It's called the epicrisis or the healing crisis. This is when you'll have like a coughing fit, a sneezing fit, a seizure, a heart attack, a stroke, that you get to this height of healing to push out all of the edema. And then there's a phase B of healing where your body goes back into the warm phase, and that completes the program. And so there's specific discrete phases. And the cool thing about this, I mean, everything about it is cool, but the coolest thing, it's mathematical. And so this is the math of our biology. Dr. Hamer found it follows certain specific patterns. He even saw that this pattern can be seen in music. I mean, it's like the universal laws that apply to everything. It's 369. It's looking at these like fractals and the way that things are oriented in nature. They are patterned off of this master template, and you can see it. You can see the beauty of all of the laws of nature in these laws of biology. It's amazing and it's so brilliant. And so that is the law of two phases. The third one was the categories. So all of the endoderm, ectoderm, mesoderm, and how those operate, as well as the fourth biological law, which is the story about the microbes.
Wow, you did fantastic. That was a mouthful, and I really appreciate you taking the time to take me through that because it really does paint a full picture for everyone listening as well. So, okay, so if somebody comes to you and they're like, Dr. Melissa, I am absolutely on board with what you're saying. I'm experiencing these symptoms, but I can't. What if they can't get to the source of the conflict? Or like, do you have to know this exact moment where the body was heightened in order to heal?
Yes, I mean, you want to find what started this, because before that, there was no conflict. Then something happened, it caught you off guard, and the conflict is resolved when it can't happen again. And so when you have this deep realization that what happened then can't happen now, that's when the conflict is completely resolved. And the thing is there's always going to be clues. So if you can't remember what the original conflict is, and a lot of people can't, like another thing with the separation conflicts, when you're in a separation conflict, there's actually memory loss. So you actually have memory loss associated with the program because nature is like trying to help you to forget the person that you're missing. And so it
Mm.
can be exceptionally difficult to figure out, especially if there's some memory loss going on. But there's always going to be clues. And so that's how you just get started with the process of, okay, what is the symptom? Oh, it's digestive issues. Okay, so we know it's an indigestible anger, some deprivation, something, so depending if it's higher up in the digestive tract, it's usually about like there's an aspect of starvation or deprivation. Lower down, so the closer to the colon is kind of the uglier, the more unspeakable and dirty the indigestible thing is in your life. And so we kind of will look at the overarching theme. And then we have to look at, when does this flare up for you? So every time a symptom flares up, so most people that have chronic symptoms, it's not just like one note all the time. It's like it might be there to some extent all the time, but it's worse sometimes. And sometimes it's not as bad. That's what we need to pay attention to, because when it gets more intense, we have to figure out, oh, what was going on? What happened that day? What were you thinking about? Who were you around? What was the environment like? Because that's a thread to the original conflict. That's giving us clues about what happened. So this work is detective work. This is not a magic wand. This is not, anything that's just, poof, it's gone. It's making, you have to connect the dots. You have to figure out, okay, what was going on then? What's going on now? How can I be more present in the moment to when I am reacting to something? What all is going on? Are there, and this, the more you get in tune. And so that's why, like, really getting in tune with your innate intelligence, with your intuition, with your instincts, so that's just another way to cultivate the environment where the realization can land. So a lot of times people are so stressed out and panicked and like, oh, I have to fix this. They're such in a rush to like fix all of their symptoms that they're not quieting down, and letting the insight or the memory or the flash, because it'll just kind of like come in your mind like a postcard. Oh yeah, that did happen to me. Because a lot of time, I mean, it's nuts actually. Dr. Hamer, he did this, so this knowledge has been around for 40 years. He has submitted his thesis to the University of Tübingen. They're like, we can't look at this. So it's never been, they can't, as soon as some high level university like actually validates this, everything about medicine would have to change. All of the textbooks, everything about the curriculum that is taught in medical school, everything would have to change. And, the powers that be are not interested in this type of change because it would be absolutely radical. But he has had several university validations where he basically would come in to a panel of doctors and prove, and he'd take a case and he'd walk through all of the biological laws and show, look at the accuracy of this and this and this, it's always present. And he got validation from these universities. And there was a case where a man, Hamer looked at his brain scan, because Dr. Hamer could just take a look at your brain scan and know what he saw there indicated about your symptoms, your health issues. And he saw something on the brain scan that indicated that this man definitely had an attack against the heart conflict. And so he's in front of, again, this panel of doctors. And he knows this, he's interviewing the patient in front of everyone. And over an hour, he's asking him about this conflict. This, there was an attack against your heart. Okay, did you have a heart problem? Did your wife, did your mother-in-law, did your parents, did anybody in your life have a heart problem? And over an hour, the patient's like, no, I don't remember. No, nothing there, nothing there. And all the doctors were like, okay, Hamer, maybe you're not always right, but Hamer knew, because there would not be an impact in the brain in that particular location if this person did not experience an attack against his heart. And so, the next hour begins and he just keeps on questioning. He just keeps on going. And he said, did you ever have a dog that had a heart issue? And all of a sudden, the guy, when it was something about the question about the dog, he remembered, a dog barking. And in this whole story just comes out about how there was some, holiday in his country, and it was like a feast where they have a goose. The goose is the meal, and he hears his dog barking in the backyard. And he runs out there, and there is a goose thief. There was someone there to snatch his goose the night before this festival. And so he goes and, he goes to confront the goose thief, and the goose thief turns around and he's got an axe, and he slams the axe into this man's chest. And so what is a, more spot on attack against the heart conflict? But this man, has suppressed this memory. Obviously, it's extremely traumatic. But, again, Dr. Hamer knew this is this is a law. He knew that in order for there to be this impact in the brain, in this area, this conflict had to have happened to this man. Even though everyone's like, yeah, maybe sometimes it's not that way. He goes, no, it's always that way. And he questioned him until he found what the conflict was that led to this, this change in his brain, which is, just such a cool thing to know that when this is a reliable map of how the body works. And that's why, like, the more that you study it and the more you see it on your own, when you see it on your own body, it's like, whoa. And that's where, for me, I learned, I read about it and I was like, okay, this all makes sense to me, but it's all, you can validate it on yourself, on your animals, on your children, on your partner. They have a symptom and you're like, okay, this is what happened. And you start to see this map and you start to know this is just how the body works. This is the basics for how the tissues function. This is the conflict that leads to the adaptation, that leads to the symptom every time.
That is so cool. I love how you said there's like a mathematical formula, because there is sacred geometry that exists in our planet. There are formulas. We live in like an algorithm. I tell people all the time, the information I channel from the Akashic records is always like, your brain is literally a computer. It's
Yeah.
not as hard to change things as we think it is. We as humans, we overcomplicate and make it really hard. And they're like, it's literally like we're living in this like computer database brain. And so, okay, so if I came to you, would you be able to do this brain scan on me and look at my brain and read the map just as he did in this example?
No, I've not been trained in the brain
Okay, okay.
scans. And again, this is like, it's so unfortunate how, like, again, every doctor should have this training. Everybody who's done
Yeah,
any should have this training. This should be the absolute, should be the standard of care across the board. But this information has been suppressed. People don't know about this. That, for me, when I came across this in 2017, I had been in the holistic health world for 10 years at that point. And I'm like, I thought I knew everything about holistic health. And I'm like, this changes everything. I'm like, everything I learned in school is like, what? Everything that medical doctors know, this is missing the absolute most important link. And so, unfortunately, we need wide scale. We need hospitals that operate off of this. We need, brain scans everywhere. And so there is not currently a training to kind of get good brain scan training, but there are people that I can refer you to get the brain scan analyzed from this perspective. And but I work off of the symptoms, and so I work with the person and look at your symptoms, and your symptoms, the brain scan just confirms what the symptoms already tell us. Because if you have a tissue adaptation on the organ level, we can work off the psyche. So the psyche brain organ, we can look at the organ and look at the psyche. We would just know that the brain scans are for people that are dealing with like much more intense things, or they really need to figure something out and can't figure out if they're in the conflict or if it's been resolved, or they're just curious, to have their brain scan read. But it's not absolutely necessary. It's super important and really would be great to have, but it's not. And there is this someone is trying to develop some technology to make it easier to, different ways of even scanning the brain so we can figure it out. But the technology and the widespread availability for that is not quite there yet, because again, this whole field is not, no one's putting research funding behind this. This is, grassroots. Learn it for yourself, learn the map for yourself, and make the connections you need to make in order to figure out what's going on with you.
absolutely. I feel I agree with what you're saying. I feel I know a ton about holistic health. And obviously, this podcast is alternative healing. Like anything goes over here. I'm just a curious cat. I've always been that way. And I've never heard of anything that you're talking about ever. So I'm really excited. You're the perfect person to be the face of this, this revolution. So, and I've heard you mention the word map a few different times. So is there, if I wanted to look up some symptoms, is there any type of encyclopedia of, the connections in the brain and the body and the psyche, or how do we get more information?
Yeah, so on my blog, I have a list of all the resources. So where you can get the diagnosis chart, so figuring out the all of the germ layers. So there is the chart of Germanic New Medicine. There's lots of websites and things that you can go and look up all of your symptoms. And so that's where I would point you to, is to the blog and all of the resource links that are there. There's tutorials. And so this is something you just have to kind of make it your hobby, and you start to learn a little bit about it. You're like, okay, what's this symptom? Oh, hair loss. Okay, what's that? Okay, so it's a separation conflict. If you have something comes up in your realm, you go and you look up, what does GNM say about this? What does the map say about this particular symptom? And you start to connect the dots, because, and again, every person needs to learn this. This is your birthright. You should have known this your whole entire life. We need to raise up a new generation of children who understand, oh, when I get a sore throat, it's because I couldn't swallow something. Oh, when I, have a tummy ache, it's because I got angry about something. It's like, and there are children, I love it when parents who are raising their kids with this, and the kids just know, and it's so intuitive, and it makes
Mm,
so much sense, and it's not fear-based, because everything, in health is fear-based. Even holistic health is like, oh, don't eat that. That's going to make you sick. Oh, there's chemicals in that. That's going to make you sick. Oh, there's germs in that. It's still all the same thing. It's materialism. It's looking at the external world and saying, oh, there's something dangerous and bad out here that's going to make me sick. So it's victim mentality. Something outside is harming me, rather than I had an experience. I had a deeply felt experience that impacted my psyche, and my biology adapted to it. That's happening in me. That is something that I have complete 100% personal responsibility over, and no, we can't prevent shocking things from happening. And that's not the point to prevent it. It's to be
Right.
aware and to understand, to be aware and to understand how shocking events affect the body and how it adapts to that, and seeing everything. I mean, I have a class called the language of adaptation, because it's like, this is just an adaptation. And we look at everything, cancer and adaptation, a cold sore and adaptation, all of these things are how the body adapts. And so, yeah, on my blog, there's a whole list of resources. On my YouTube channel, I have a playlist of basic videos, so you can just start to wrap your mind around this, on my podcast. And so there's just a lot of things that you can just start to listen to get the general formula, the math, the basics for how these biological laws operate.
Wow. Yeah. I'll link everything in the show notes for you guys as well. I have just two more questions, and then I selfishly just have so many more, but I will keep it to two. So, everyone listening, we have talk a lot about hormone health over here, and so you're saying like anybody who struggles with any like hormonal acne, is that even real? Is that real? No.
No, it's not. So if you have acne that comes up at a certain point in your cycle, it's a track to a feeling soiled or feeling attacked conflict. So at some point, you had a conflict at that point in your cycle. And so the body, again, it's this supercomputer, and it remembers everything. And it can track every, so if you have it on a certain day of your cycle, even like seasonal allergies, the body remembers when this pollen was in the air and I had a stink conflict. And so with hormones, the hormones is actually a whole different rabbit hole that is amazing. So Dr. Hamer also found that conflicting events responsible for the whole range of sexuality. So also like mental health issues, bipolar, schizophrenia, nymphomania. If someone is hypersexual, if they don't experience themselves to be the gender that they are, gender dysphoria has everything to do with sexual and territorial conflicts in the temporal lobes. And so if you have a right-handed woman who has a sexual conflict, that conflict lowers her estrogen, increases her testosterone, causes her to perceive the world more as a male. And so it's absolutely crazy to see that when you have a constellation, two conflicts on opposite sides of the brain, it's going to determine how who you're attracted to, how you perceive your reality. And so that is, when it comes to hormones, we're looking at the temporal lobes in the brain. And with acne, we're looking at feeling attacked or feeling soiled. And if the acne happens to happen at a certain point in the cycle, it's a track.
Wow. Okay. So essentially, the most popular connection with hormones is going to be some level of sexual frustration.
Yeah. So with hormones, yeah, we're looking at loss conflicts in the ovaries. So if you have a loss of a partner, fearing losing a partner, if you have frustrations in your relationship, one of the descriptions for an ovarian conflict is the man of my life has become the jerk of my life.
Oh,
Um,
well,
yeah.
yeah,
And
hate to see it.
I know, like with the ovaries, and then also sexual frustration with the cervix. Different female issues like related to like yeast infections has to do with a procreation, implantation, or conflict regarding disrespectful treatment from a man. And so if you're having,
Mm,
so every symptom can tell us what exactly happened to you. If your hormones are off, if you're experiencing like rage or anger, we're looking at an identity conflict and a
mm,
territorial anger conflict. And so that
mm,
also has to do, so when your identity conflict, so if you're having kind of like a rage moment, you have a territorial conflict and an identity conflict. And when the identity conflict is emphasized, so if you don't like the way someone is seeing you, if you're like, I don't know my place, I don't know where I belong, the identity conflict being emphasized causes kind of a rage moment. So you'll like freak out. And so this is, we can look at how the hormonal status, how the conflicts, the specific things that have happened to you make up what we call your personality. So your personality and how you see the world. So someone also who is interested in, there's something called the flying constellation. So people who are esoteric or who, kind of have extrasensory abilities, that's a flying constellation, which is a scare, fright, and a territorial fear. And so when a person has these two conflicts at the same time, the psyche leaves the realm. It flies above and it goes to a different realm, and it can access different realities, like astral travel, or people who are really interested in, spirituality, or, angels or aliens or things that are not of this realm. It's because you have an altered sense of reality because of the constellation. And so it's like, even like our and it is, it's a super sense. And so, not seeing the constellations as something bad, it's simply that when you're bombarded with a certain, combination of conflicts, the biology has this ability to open up new realms, which is really amazing. And it's how, like, discover it's like the discoverer constellation, the ability to kind of zoom out and to make new connections. And so, seeing the conflicts, the traumas that have happened to you, have become your superpowers, your extra sensitivity. So even autism, for example, it is the combination of a territorial anger conflict and a scare fright. And so when those two conflicts happen at the same time, the person, kind of goes within themselves, they withdraw. And so everything has its biological purpose and its meaning. And when you can see the map, connect the dots, look at the things that happened that led to it, it's like, it's so clear, it's crystal clear why people are the way that they are.
Well, in a way, I always say this. I tell people, I'm like, God made this universe perfect and whole, and everything makes sense. Even when people are like, well, why is this going wrong, or why is this thing happening? I'm like, it's because we do live in this perfectly balanced universe. And just to speak to what you're saying about my extra sensory connection, and all of this came about as a result from an incredibly traumatic, I had a near death experience a few years ago. And I was forced to exit my body. I completely exited my body. And ever since then, I've had those really strong, psychic abilities, or extra sensory abilities, or however you worded it so beautifully. But it's true. I mean, in a way, I'm like, yes, it's such a great gift, but it was the result of, I would say, an incredibly shocking experience for me. So that is just so interesting. And then, is that the same for, I would say this is probably the number one question I get, because I work with a lot of women in this space when they come to me with readings, is always, there's a lot around struggling to conceive or infertility issues. And I've heard a lot about, like, there's so much going on with the birth control era that we were in. And but you're saying that this could potentially just be an individual adaptation that they're experiencing.
Yeah. And so if a woman's struggling to get pregnant, we're looking at either, so one of these constellations. So again, when the sexual, so most women, because of what we've been exposed to. So a sexual conflict can be, hearing your parents have sex, or an exam at the doctor, or seeing pornography, like anything of a sexual nature that you were unprepared for. Obvious things like abuse or molestation, creates this sexual conflict. And it turns, so for a right-handed woman, it's different if you're, because the wiring, again, the perfection of the brain, the body, and the design of the humans, the right-handed woman is wired differently than the left. But the right-handed woman, when she has a sexual conflict, her estrogen goes down, her testosterone goes up. That causes her to not be able to conceive when this masculine conflict is emphasized, because her hormones are tilted. And most women, and we prize this in the modern woman. We want the woman who, so this is manic. So when the woman has a masculine conflict, she's more manic, which means she's active, she's busy, she's out and she's doing stuff, and she's, boss babing it up. And so, but that is a masculine frame that she's experiencing, and her hormonal status is typically one of a masculine woman. And so that can be one of the reasons for inability to conceive, is to be in a masculine state hormonally. Also, loss conflict. So if you're if you've had, loss of a partner, loss, this whole situation with, struggles within your relationship, that causes the ovaries. When you have an ovarian conflict, there's loss of tissue during the beginning, which causes a lowering of estrogen, which means you may not be ovulating. And so that is another conflict that can cause infertility. Also, if you are worried financially, so if you're like afraid of not being able to feed your children, so if there is some type of financial scarcity type of conflict, that can cause an adaptation with prolactin, which makes it so that you're not ovulating and you're not having your cycle. And so that's where, those are some of the, if there's also a chronic conflict of disrespectful treatment or procreation fears, or if you've had ongoing, yeast infections, that indicates that there's been, potentially an issue in the fallopian tube, so that you run a conflict again and again. And that can be another reason for fertility issues. So again, there's always places to look, and there's always something that you can identify and work through and begin to resolve, shift, kind of get your hormones back into balance through resolving your masculine conflict. And again, that might mean changing your life, because if you have just a very masculine presentation and the biology is like, the mother needs to be provided and protected, provided for and protected. If she's doing the protecting and the providing, that isn't the space for the bringing in of the new life. And so again, we have to kind of look at our priorities, look at how we've structured our lives, and is it biologically sound, or is it, modern living that's not in alignment with our ancient biology?
Hmm. This just really validates what I've been telling everyone. I'm like, we need to go back to living on a compound. I want to make butter and I just want a pet horse. That's like, everyone's like, what's your 5-year plan? I'm like, it's not what you're expecting me to tell you because I want it to just be playing just in my feminine, because I really struggled with that. Like the whole, like the boss babe moment that everyone was like, yeah. And now I'm like, no, I want to be protected and provided for, and I want to ride a horse, and that's all I want to do. Okay, so this is the final question that I always love to ask everyone. As you know, this is a school from the cosmos, but it's mostly a school of intuition. So I'm here to teach women how to reconnect with their intuition. And at its foundation, essentially what you're saying is that our bodies know. I love this presentation of your information because I think it just opens people's brain to this whole new reality that, wow, there is this ancient wisdom that has been programmed inside of me that I can tune into and I can listen. I mean, it was just when I got my autoimmune diagnosis, quote, quote, from the doctor, I closed out all noise except for my own for the first few weeks and was like, I'm going to listen to my body. I'm going to slow down. I'm going to take things off my plate. And one by one, I went through that process via the guide of my intuition. So I would just love for you to share if you have a favorite practice or a way that you love to connect with your intuition, or if there's anything around intuition that you would love to leave us with.
It's all intuition. It all is that connection with source, that connection with that deep biology. And I love the window to understand, oh, this is how, this programming that allowed my ancestors to survive. So whatever this is that's going on with my body, it is deep wisdom. It is deep, deep wisdom. And to even just meditate on that, even just to, like the more that you understand these laws, the more that you see, wow, that's why my body did this. That, and the only way I could be having this symptom is if my body went through this adaptation. And so really I love to use the map to see, wow, this is what my body did to help me. And what does that feel like to be helped by your body, not hurt by your body? And it's like, oh, but the symptom hurts. And looking at the ideas, my main practice is awareness, is like watching what comes up when I think about this. What is the fear made out of? If there's fear there, if there's anxiety, if there's worry, if there's doubt, if there's, oh yeah, but what about this? So in the mind, so when you take this in, you take this whole map in and you say, wow, this makes a lot of biological sense. And something in your mind goes, oh, but what about this? Pay attention to that. Like, who said that? What is that made out of? What's this concept? What's this identity? Who, what am I, where's the war? Where am I fighting against myself? Where am I not in alignment? Because that's really what it's showing you. A conflict is split energy. And so yes, but where am I split in my energy? And all of this it's kind of this scanning process to see the symptom is telling me something very specific about where I'm split in my energy, where I'm living out of alignment, where I'm not listening to my intuition, and how can I get back to my biological roots? What is most natural for me? Like, so we have ideas, identities, cultural programming. It's like, what's authentic? And so, this really is, it's the deepest truth. It's like, what's the deepest truth for me? What does my body want me to do? What is the most natural thing? Where am I overriding? That's modern living for you. Is everything about it is overriding your nature, fast, immediate. Where am I hurrying? Where am I rushing? That is, there's programs for not being able to get the morsel. Oh, I'm too slow. I need to be faster. I should be further along. Oh, I can't do this. I need to hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And the biology says, oh, let me enhance your thyroid, because the thyroid, we need to speed you up. We need to hurry up, and we need to, get this morsel. We need to get rid of this thing. I know a young woman who that was her experience as she, got into this, kind of multi-level marketing thing, and she was selling stuff every month, and she was trying to meet these quotas, and she was trying to, like, up her rank every month. And so there was this rush, there was this hurry, there was this pressure. I need to hurry up and get this morsel, and then she was diagnosed with a thyroid condition. It's like, this makes perfect sense when we see what's the essence. And so you were, and why am I doing this? Why am I rushing? What am I trying to accomplish? What am I trying to achieve? How is that, what message is that sending to my body? And so that's, for me, sitting in that, and the intuition that comes from just knowing I've been sending this signal unconsciously. I wasn't aware, but I sent this signal. I requested these extra cells from my thyroid. I requested this adaptation through my experiences. And now that I see the personal responsibility and how my body is just responding to what I requested, now I can see, oh, I don't want to request that anymore. I need to change my life and figure out, a more, simple way of living, or a different way of living, or a different way of going about something. It's like, do I have to approach, let's say you're still doing your business. Can I do business in a more chill way? Can I do it in a way where I don't have this pressure? And so it's creativity too. And I feel like the intuition leads to creative solutions, because there's a way for you to get all of the things that you want in the physical realm. It's just, am I creative enough, to imagine and to open myself up to new intuitive things, new pathways? It's like, okay, I want to be here. I'm here. I want to be here. I don't know how I'm going to get there, and the mind says, oh, you need to plan out every single step. But intuition says, I can show you, and so letting intuition guide you to your resolution is, I find, so much better than trying to, like, kind of squeeze your brain cells together and say, okay, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? It's like, shh, quiet, let it come, and so that's one of my practices, is just, how often are you hanging up the phone, rather than like calling all day long, how do I fix this? How do I hang the phone up and let it come in?
Mm. I always say that the ability to get lost in daydreaming or visualization or your imagination is such a lost art. Like you said, like giving your brain that space to be creative and to be playful and to just like let it come in when you're taking the pressure off and you're just getting lost kind of in, for me it's meditation, but for some people it could be daydream, however it shows up. But essentially what you're saying, just asking yourself some of those questions, and you would be shocked that your body has so much more wisdom that we even actually know we have the ability to access at this point, which is really cool. And I love what you're saying. It's the beautiful note to end on, is that our body is not attacking us. Our body is trying to help us. Our body loves us so much. It is like, I will do anything to keep you alive. I love you. Like, I am not here to take you out. And that was something that has been so pivotal in my healing journey. And I love that that's one of the foundations and the core of your belief system as well, because it's just true. I'm like, we were not designed to, there's no evil in our cells trying to take us out. It's not. And when we can look through this lens of observation versus this judgmental, harsh lens, when we just observe the symptom for what it is, it's so much easier to change, because we're not coming from this highly charged frustration, judgmental place. We can just say, ah, okay, that's happening. Okay. And accept it as it is. So thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom. I am so happy. AG University, what a treat. If there's anything else that you want to leave us with, where they can find you on Instagram, let us know as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Instagram, YouTube, my website, dive in, like, find some resources, start studying this. I just encourage anyone that's come across this to, like, this is a gift. This is, you have, received this at the right time. This is a gift for you, for your legacy. This is for your offspring. This is for your children's children's children. This is to leave and exit the fear-based paradigm of sickness and germs and disease and autoimmune and the body attacking itself. I mean, that is a paradigm of darkness. This is a paradigm of life. This is a paradigm of healing. This is a paradigm of understanding. And if you have come across this, it's right for you at this time to start down this path, to learn this, because this is freedom from fear. Every other model leads to fear. This model leads to freedom. And so I encourage you to, take it up and to get into it.
Oh, I'm excited. I am all in. I can't wait. I'm going to your blog after this. I'm so excited. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much for this time today. I really, really appreciate you. And I'm going to go stalk all the things, and everyone else should too.
Amazing. Well, thank you for having me. I take every opportunity to share this with people because it's like, okay, everyone needs to know this amazing gift. So thanks for having me.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Alrighty. Thanks, guys. Thanks for tuning in. See you next Wednesday. Bye. As always, I just wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in. If you feel so called or if it feels aligned, I would love for you to leave me a review here. I always love reading your beautiful thoughts and messages. And also, you can find me at Anna Grace Newell on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. And I will link all of my courses, AG University course curriculum, in the show notes, along with if you're interested in booking an Akashic Records reading with me. My scheduling link goes out in my newsletter. It goes out once a month and it's completely free. I would love to have you there. As always, I'm a proud professor and you get an A+ for making it all the way through the end. Love you.